Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to All24 News Midnight program coming to you live from Algiers. Let's check out the headlines. President Tebboune receives EU's Josep Borrell, who calls for Algeria's contribution in ending the war in Ukraine and hails Algeria's combat of terrorism in the Sahel region. Also coming up, Algeria consolidates its strategic energy partnership with Uganda and signs a memorandum of understanding for cooperation with Djibouti. Also ahead, UN envoy to Libya expands its political consultations in order to achieve consensus on its initiative, and Washington praises Algeria's positive role in advancing a political solution to the crisis. And Chinese president vows to make the military a Great Wall of Steel, while his premier calls for beneficial bilateral cooperation with the U.S. Hello again and welcome to the detail. First, in our topical news, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune met on Monday with the European Union High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission, Josep Borrell. The Algerian presidency stated that President Tebboune received the European official, Mr. Borrell, who is on a working visit to Algeria at the presidential palace in the capital, Algiers. On Monday, President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, held a working lunch in Algiers in honor of the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission, Josep Borrell. The Algerian side also took part in the working lunch with the private principal secretary to the Presidency of the Republic, Mr. Abdelaziz Khalaf, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Ammar Belani, and the Director General for Europe at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Mohammed Al-Amin Ben Shrif. On the European side, Ambassador and Head of Delegation of the European Union to Algeria, Thomas Eckert, Managing Director for the Middle East and North Africa European External Service, Helen Logal, and the member of the Cabinet of the High Representative of the European Union, Raphael Dare. After the audience, the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Josep Borrell, called on Algeria to contribute to putting an end to the Russian-Ukrainian war. Let's listen.
The EU supports Ukraine politically, militarily, financially, and humanitarily, and we will continue to do so. We call on Algeria to contribute to putting an end to the war.
Josep Borrell described Algeria as the main partner of the European Union in combating terrorism and relied upon to coordinate efforts to continue fighting the scourge in the Sahel region, calling for the resumption of dialogue on security issues at the highest levels.
Allow me to underline some points regarding certain sectors. First, energy is undoubtedly a sector in which we have partnership. That going well. 90% of Algeria's exports of gas is directed to Europe. And we count on Algeria, as it is a reliable partner, especially in hard times. And we wish to deepen this partnership with Algeria, not just for now and temporarily for gas, but rather we look into the future and are willing to give priority to European investment in the renewable energy sector, because Algeria has a promising future in this field.
The High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy considered that renewable energies are promising for partnership and economic cooperation with Algeria.
الجزائر لها تاريخ كبير.
It's important to say that we re-engage high-level talks regarding security, and the next meeting will be held before the end of the year. And this proves that Algeria is a reliable and main partner in combating terrorism. Algeria has a long experience in this field, and we want to develop a joint strategic vision regarding both the old and new threats, as well as coordinate on security matters, attempting to strengthen security at the regional and continental levels.
The European official, Josep Borrell, also pledged to redouble efforts to recover Algerian funds smuggled abroad. Let's take a listen.
The fight against corruption and money laundering represents a priority for both sides. We exchanged talks about the matter and the smuggled, as well as embezzled money. I'm convinced of the level of our cooperation strength in the field. Algerian government's will to work on embezzled money will be the focus of cooperation with the EU.
Moving on now, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni continues for the third day his state visit to Algeria at the invitation of Algerian President Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune. On Monday, the Ugandan president visited the Nuclear Research Center in Algiers and was accompanied by the Algerian Minister of Energy and Mines, Mr. Mohamed Al-Qab. On the same day, the President of the Republic of Uganda received at his residence in Algiers the Algerian Minister of Energy and Mines, Mr. Mohamed Al-Qab. The Ugandan president also received a delegation from the Algerian Council for Economic Renewal. The recent strategic energy partnership between Algeria and Uganda was marked by the signing of a memorandum of understanding that includes Sonatrach supplying shipments of crude and refined derivatives to Uganda. At a time, President Yoweri Museveni called on Algerian companies to help his country exploit the recently discovered oil and gas fields. Zara Farjani reports.
Algeria and Uganda signed a memorandum of understanding for cooperation in the field of energy in order to establish strategic partnership. The recent deal includes Sonatrach providing refined petroleum derivatives to Uganda with the shipment of Algerian crude to the Uganda National Oil Company. President Tebboune, in a statement after the signing of the agreement, affirmed Algeria's keenness on developing and accelerating ways of partnership and its willingness to share experiences and expertise in the field of energy with Kampala.
الجزائر حريصة على تطوير علاقاتها مع جمهورية أوغندا ومع عمقها الإفريقي وتعتبر ذلك توجها استراتيجيا. إن زيارتكم فخامة الرئيس فرصة للعمل سويا على الرقي بعلاقاتنا الثنائية من خلال استغلال الإمكانيات المتاحة في بلدينا. وأود أن أؤكد في هذه السانحة استعدادنا لتقاسم التجارب والخبرات في مجالات الطاقة والفلاحة والصناعات الغذائية والتعليم العالي والبحث العلمي.
Uganda considers Algeria a reliable partner with its positive contribution to the development and integration of Africa. For this reason, the Ugandan president called on Algerian companies to invest in his country and help make the best use of the newly discovered huge oil and gas fields.
Products from Algeria, the ones of petroleum and petrochemicals, and we are looking at Algeria investing in our refinery. As His Excellency mentioned in his statement, we have discovered some good quantities of petroleum, and we want to build an inland refinery.
This Algerian-Ugandan energy partnership supports the course of dynamic relations between the two countries and strengthens Algeria's quest to achieve continental and African integrations.
Algeria and Djibouti signed on Monday a memorandum of understanding for cooperation in the energy and mines field, which includes the establishment of cooperation between the Sonatrach Company and the Djibouti International Hydrocarbons Company. The two sides are studying cooperation opportunities in the field of electricity production, transmission, and distribution. The Memorandum of Understanding defines aspects of enhancing cooperation between the two parties in the fields of exchanging information, technological knowledge, and experience with regard to research and intensifying exploration and exploitation of hydrocarbons, natural gas, and mines. The proceedings of the 58th regular session of the Council of Arab Ministers of Health kicked off in Algiers on Monday. The Executive Bureau met under the presidency of Algeria to study and discuss the pivotal issues raised with the aim of keeping pace with the current challenges and strengthening joint Arab action, provided that the Arab delegation decide on its approval on Tuesday.
Among the topics that will be addressed during this council is the establishment of the Arab organizations and bodies, similar to the discussion of Algeria's proposal to establish the Arab Agency for Health Development and the Arab Center for Cooperation and Research on HIV. which will be based in Algeria, and Egypt's proposal to establish the Arab Agency for Medicine, as well as the establishment of the Arab Center for Health Research.
Tunisia's new parliament sat for the first time on Monday, headed by the representative Salah al-Mubaraki. Deputies elected the new parliament, Ibrahim Bouderbala, as its speaker after a second round of voting. The candidates for the presidency of parliament had failed to obtain a majority during the first voting session. The Mauritanian presidency announced the dissolution of parliament on Monday as it prepares for organizing for the next parliamentary elections, the date of which was brought forward within the framework of consultations between the Ministry of Interior and political parties. According to a decree issued by the Mauritanian presidency, the Mauritanian president decided to dissolve parliament after consultations with government top officials and reviewing Article 31 of the Constitution. In a different development, UN envoy to Libya, Abdoulaye Bathily, met with the political class in Benghazi, stressing that his initiative aims to establish a high-level team that expands the framework of consultations and involves actors in charting a path leading to elections this year. Meanwhile, the U.S. Special Envoy to Libya, Richard Boyce-Noland, praised Algeria's positive role in supporting stability in Libya. Here's Islam Said with more.
Bathily is still working on his consultations with the political class, following his new initiative to involve the concerned parties to hold elections this year and put an end to the political deadlock in the country.
I met with representatives of political parties and civil society in Benghazi. I listened to their concerns about the political deadlock, their assessment of challenges facing their country, and their proposals on how to address them in order to achieve stable and prosperous Libya through inclusive elections. I stressed the need to complete the implementable roadmap for the election and stressed that many initiatives, which calls for establishing a high-level team, aim to expand the framework of consultations and involve the actors in charting a path leading to the election this year.
While the way towards elections in Libya is being paved to reach a common ground for general elections, Washington praised via its envoy to Libya the key role that is played by neighboring countries, especially Algeria, as the latter has always called for elections in Libya as a Libyan-based solution.
I had very valuable consultations with Algeria on how Libya's neighboring countries can support the political process for benefit of Libya and the region. And we also discussed the positive role that Algeria plays in supporting stability in Libya, while recognizing the need to create a new incentive to organize elections and to find a lasting political solution. I look forward to continuing consultations with Algeria on this subject of mutual interest.
Libya has been on a political turmoil as previous negotiations among engaged parties failed to find an ultimate solution for the crisis, far from transitional phases. However, the status quo in the country, according to observers, shows glimpse of optimism following Bathily's initiative, Algeria's major role in the region, and international efforts to get the country out of its political crisis, which it has been wallowing in, and meet the aspirations of the Libyan people.
To a different story now. On Monday, the Moroccan palace issued a statement explaining the importance of the decision to normalize relations with the Zionist entity, at the same time contradicting itself by retaining a clear focus on the Palestinian issue. Salman Al-Sib reports.
Once more, the Moroccan regime finds no embarrassment in defending its miserable mistake of normalization of relations with the Zionist entity, even on the expense of yesterday's allies, today's and tomorrow's enemy, Justice and Development Party. In its latest media appearance, the Royal Diwan issued a statement in which it justifies the normalization of relations by attacking the Justice and Development Party and accusing it of crossing the lines with its irresponsible and misleading positions. The bottom line is that the party has criticized on the 4th of March the positions of the Moroccan Foreign Minister Nasser Bourita, describing him as a defender of the Zionist occupation in continental and international forums amidst the ongoing aggression against Palestinian people. This is what Rabat is not keen on. So it began to cover the misfortune of its rapprochement with the entity and its internal problems that are growing every day. In response to Ban Ki-moon's party, the royal palace believes that the kingdom's foreign policy being based on an internal agenda is a dangerous and acceptable precedent, and that its relations cannot be the subject of blackmail. Nonetheless, is there a greater danger and greater blackmail than shaking hands with the occupation and planning with it to achieve narrow and cheap interests and aims? Ironically, the Moroccan Makhzen, which is not even ashamed when its name is mentioned next to the Zionist entity, and which is leading the scene of the normalizers by programming a series of exchange visits with high-ranking Zionist officials and concluding several security and economic agreements at the expense of the Palestinian and Moroccan people, is still defending Morocco's position on the Palestinian cause, saying it's irreversible, and is considered one of the priorities of the foreign policy of the Moroccan king. But do they even know that here lays an obvious contradiction in that?
The Zionist occupation forces arrested 18 Palestinians during their raid into several areas of the West Bank. The series of arrests included 9 Palestinians from the city of Hebron and 9 others from Ramallah, Beit Lahm, occupied Quds, and Toqara. Meanwhile, a Palestinian was injured after settlers attacked him in the west of Nablus. Moving on now, according to Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, Iran and Belarus have reached agreement on a roadmap for comprehensive cooperation that covers joint industrial, agricultural, transportation and logistics projects. He added that his roadmap will define the two nations' future relations. For his part, Lukashenko said sanctions on both countries allow them to explore new opportunities, and the countries shared positions on many international issues. On the sidelines of a meeting between Raisi and Lukashenko, the two countries signed 7 cooperation documents and pledged to increase the volume of trade to $100 million per year.
The Islamic Republic of Iran, despite threats and sanctions, has been able to take significant steps forward and has created opportunities for itself from sanctions. The President of Iran and I united in the opinion that sanctions give us the time to explore new opportunities. The President of Iran and I united in the opinion that sanctions give us time to explore new opportunities. It's very important for us not to lose this opportunity.
Ukrainian Colonel General Alexander Syrsky announced that fierce battles are taking place with the Russian forces in order to control the city of Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine. The Ukrainian army had earlier described the situation in Bakhmut region difficult. A day earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that his forces had killed more than 1,100 Russian soldiers. Chinese president called during the conclusion of the National People's Congress for building China into a great modern country and to work on developing national defense, while Chinese premier called for bilateral cooperation between his nation and the U.S. for both sides' benefits. Sofian Kinturi reports.
The 40th National People's Congress concluded its first session in Beijing on Monday, after successfully fulfilling its agenda. During the Congress, President Xi Jinping demanded efforts to advance the modernization of national defense and armed forces on all fronts and build the people's armed forces into a great wall of steel that is capable of effectively safeguarding national sovereignty.
From this day to the mid-21st century, the central task of the entire party and all Chinese people will be to build China into a great modern socialist country in all respects, and to advance the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation on all fronts. We will contribute the share of our generation to building a great modern socialist country and advancing national rejuvenation.
After the closing of the first session of the 40th National People's Congress, Chinese Premier Li Qiang held a press conference for the first time since Chinese president named him. Li denounced the encirclement and repression imposed by the US against his nation as part of growing tensions between the two largest economic powers in the world. He also called for both countries to enhance bilateral cooperation and to move forward.
China and the US can cooperate, and they should cooperate. There is a lot the two countries can achieve by working together. Encirclement and suppression will do no good to either side.
Relations between China and the US deteriorated after Washington imposed sanctions on Beijing after accusing it of standing by the Russian side in the war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, China has denied these allegations and shown many times its intention for peace by offering plans to end the conflict. And the recent Chinese leaders plan to travel to Russia to meet with his Russian counterpart to discuss developments, and the Chinese proposed peace plan is another proof in China's defense.
In Asia still, nuclear-armed North Korea test-fired 2 strategic cruise missiles from a submarine just as US-South Korean military drills were due to begin on Sunday. The missile tested the underwater offensive operations of submarine units that form part of North Korea's nuclear deterrent. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the military was on high alert and the country's intelligence agency was working with its US counterpart to analyze the specifics of the launch. Finally, in our news, US President Joe Biden pledged on Monday to do whatever it is needed to address a banking crisis threatened by the collapses of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, with forced regulators to step in with emergency measures. Biden said his administration's rapid action over the weekend should give Americans confidence that the US banking system is safe, adding that he was going to ask Congress and regulators to strengthen bank rules.
Second, the management of these banks will be fired. If the bank is taken over by FDIC, the people running the bank should not work there anymore. Third, investors in the banks will not be protected. They knowingly took a risk, and when the risk didn't pay off, investors lose their money. That's how capitalism works.
Well, that's all we have for today. For more, you can always visit our social media platforms. Don't forget to check them out. From me and the rest of the team, thank you for keeping it on our channel, and bye for now.